welcome to Podcast Paradise episode 3. It's been a while. It's been, actually a little over a month. But I'm back. I just had a lot of, school shit to do. But, I'm ready to hop on and get back to pumping out a few more episodes. Good news is, though, that I have some thoughts that I kind of been brewing over the past month or so. So I got a lot of material to talk about. But first, before we do that, as always, on the Podcast Paradise, we gotta talk about Paradise itself. Weather outside today, it's November 18th. We're in Hempstead, New York. It's actually, again, I said this on the last one when it was still October, but November weather I think I underrated it. It's not too cold, where it's freezing like it will be in January, and it's not very hot. It's a nice, and for me, I enjoy the cool breeze. So I'm still walking out here in flip-flops and shit, except it was snowing a couple days ago here, so I had to put on some shoes for that. But other than that, it's kind of been beautiful weather. Fall, I think I gotta reconsider kind of my thoughts on it, because this has been 3 straight months of really nice weather. But enough about that. Enough about the weather. First topic I wanted to talk about this episode is Shaquille O'Neal. This is just, I don't know why this has been kind of cropping up on NBA Twitter and NBA Instagram recently, but I guess it's just because one person will say something and then it'll get everyone else talking, and then they'll keep talking about it, and then the algorithms on Twitter and Instagram always show you old shit, so you're kind of just stuck in this loop where it's the same topic just kind of spreads through the entire basketball internet fandom for a month. But for whatever reason, people have been talking about Shaquille O'Neal, and I've heard a lot of stuff. There's been a lot of memes about there's that one picture of Shaq against the Nets in the finals where he's got 5 guys on him and he still dunks. People are like, "Oh, you're crazy if you think Draymond Green could lock him down." And then there are other people who are saying Shaq wouldn't survive in the modern era. Then there are people who are saying, "You're an idiot. Shaq is amazing. He had no flaws. He was beautiful. He would absolutely destroy the pussies in this era." So I feel like I have to, not have to, but you know how it is. I gotta kind of get my thoughts on Shaq out there, because I have some thoughts on Shaq. I think first of all, the thing about Shaq is no. Draymond Green could not guard Shaquille O'Neal. I think people have actually forgotten just how dominant Shaq is. And I think it's kind of one of these things. I think the same thing kind of happened with John Stockton, where you have the old generation who saw them play. And we'll talk about John Stockton for an example. The people from the 90s saw him play. And then just kind of, he rose up the all-time ranks through kind of the duration of his career and the longevity, and how he was what was he? He was old as shit in those 97 and 98 finals, and he was still one of the, 7 best players in the league, and maybe the best point guard in the league. And it was just kind of this long run of excellence. He played till he was 40, and he was good. And so he kind of rose up the all-time rankings. And then just kind of over time, people from my generation who never saw him play just kind of look at the all-time rankings, and we see John Stockton's 3rd best point guard of all time leader in assists and steals, and it's wow, this guy was filthy. He was, other than Magic, he might have been the best point guard ever. And for, I guess, the people from the older generation just kind of forget, and they're like, "Oh, was John Stockton?" And they look back at the, kind of the rankings, and they're like, "Yeah, I guess he was. He was all-time leader in assists. He led the league in assists like every freaking year. His assist numbers were just stupidly high. But for whatever reason, it just kind of gets forgotten about. And you really have to dig to uncover these like pretty basic facts that like John Stockton was overrated. He was not that good. He got absolutely annihilated by Gary Payton every time they freaking played. He was nowhere near as good as someone like Isaiah Thomas, even though he seems to always get put higher than Isaiah and, you know, guys like Chris Paul and Steph Curry on these all-time point guard lists. And it takes like a shocking amount of digging to just like find these things. Like, yeah, John Stockton wasn't actually that good. He wasn't the best point guard of his era. And it's just weird how, because he kind of got put so high on these lists because of his longevity, and then the people who never saw him play look at the lists and get this inflated idea of how good he was, and then the people who did see him play forget, and then they look at the list and they get this inflated idea of how good he was. So now John Stockton is really overrated. And I think kind of the opposite happened with Shaq, where Shaq was so unbelievably dominant in his era. And you even look at some of the shit that people were saying about him back then. It was like, we need to raise the rims. He's too he's too big. We need to make the rims 11 feet. You look back on all these like rankings from the time where it was like Shaq. Some people were saying Shaq is the greatest player ever. He had you get 2000, 2001, 2002. He had like the highest scoring average of anyone in history in the NBA Finals. And people were like, oh my God, this guy is like, he might be literally the best basketball player ever. And then just kind of because of the totality of his career, like the fact that he kind of took a while to straighten himself out and get to that like completely dominant Shaq that was winning 3 straight titles and 3 straight finals MVPs. Because in the late 90s, he didn't really take it seriously. He was he was an underperforming superstar. I think it's very safe to say that. And it wasn't really until he met Phil in LA where it was like he kind of unlocked his own potential and figured out the right way to play. And then after that, he, of course, got fat, stopped caring about his weight and his performance. Really let his work ethic slip even further. And then he was just kind of, like, you look at kind of the totality of his career, and he has 3 unbelievable, not even seasons. Like, 2002, he had he had the same dominant playoffs that he had in 2000 and 2001, but he didn't give a shit during the regular season. And 2001, same thing. Kobe took a lot of his shine that season. Kobe jacked up a lot of shots. There was tension and awful chemistry on that team. So he really only had one brilliant regular season in 2000. And, I mean, that season was absurd. That is one of the most absurd seasons anyone's ever had in the history of the league. And then again, you just kind of look at his career as a whole, and you're like, man, he didn't really achieve his full potential. He didn't really care. He didn't have the same kind of third act in his career that someone like Kobe did, or even Hakeem Olajuwon. So then Shaq gets put lower on the all-time lists because, I mean, and probably rightfully so, right? For me, I kind of look at peak more than longevity, but I mean, putting him lower because his longevity sucked is totally valid. It's a perfectly valid reasoning to put Kobe and Duncan and Hakeem Olajuwon, all those guys. It's totally justified to put them over him. And even Durant too. I think you could make a case that Durant should probably be higher than Shaq if you're really into longevity. So then again, we grow up and we look at every list and we see Kobe is ahead of Shaq. almost every list you see, Kobe's like, I don't know, 7, Shaq's usually like 8 or 9. And again, it seems like the older people have already forgotten. They're like, oh yeah, Shaq wasn't as good as Kobe. Kobe, he's the same. And of course, you had that weird period in like 08, 09, 10, 11, 12, 13, where Kobe was like vastly overrated. Like everyone was talking about him like, oh, this is the second coming of Michael Jordan. Kobe Bryant is, of course, he's a top 5 player ever. And really, he never played at that level. And even like 2008, 9, 10, that wasn't even his peak. He was he was a much better player in like 06. It's just, like think of it, he was 32 in 2010 when he won that second title without Shaq, and he didn't even play well in the finals. And there's been a compelling internet case that Pau Gasol deserved that finals MVP, and to be honest, probably so. And Kobe notoriously, I shouldn't even say notoriously anymore, because people seem to have all forgotten that he almost shot the Lakers out of the fucking series in the 7th game. And so yeah, whatever. Overrated Kobe always gets puts ahead of Shaq because of his longevity. And again, for whatever reason, I guess people just forget, and everyone's like, oh yeah, the list has Kobe ahead of Shaq. Kobe must have been better. But it's like everyone just completely forgot that like Shaq was better than Kobe. Kobe was never as good as Shaq was. And I love Tim Duncan. Tim Duncan is one of my 5 favorite players ever. But he wasn't Shaq. And it kind of pains me to admit it, because Tim Duncan is kind of everything that you value in a basketball player. He, knew when to take over, great passer, great low post player, brilliant defender, unreal teammate and leader. But he wasn't as good as Shaq. Shaq was better than him. That's really all you can say. Shaq, 2000, 2001, 2002, Shaq was way better than Tim Duncan. Tim Duncan never got to that level. Tim Duncan was awesome. Tim Duncan, and not so much anymore, but a lot of people kind of think of him that he was never like a high usage, high shot attempt player. But I mean, just look at the 03 playoffs, and people think about that team like, oh, they still had Parker and Ginobili, but those guys were not nearly as good as A, you think they are, and B, then they were so young. That team was a whole lot of Duncan and not much else, and they won the title. And look at his stats those games. He was brilliant in those playoffs. But he wasn't Shaq. Shaq was just completely out of this world. He was you needed a double team to guard him in the post. He scored on them too. He was just a wrecking ball. And and people forget that he was a brilliant passer. Like, he really was. I don't know why it's just forgotten. Like, it's just gone from people's memories that he was an excellent passer. But he was super unselfish. And on those the Lakers three-peat, the offense always ran better through Shaq than Kobe every time. And yet people just forget. People forget how good Shaq was. And yeah, it's fair, absolutely, to put Kobe and especially Duncan over Shaq. But don't let people forget, Shaq was better than them. He just didn't play as well for as long. So that's that. I think that's kind of settled. But the other thing I want to talk about with Shaq is even people who are all talking about, like the people who are on the side of, oh yeah, Shaq would have no problems. He'd destroy teams today, and he would. He'd be unguardable. And the fact even back then, bigger 7-footers were getting jobs in the NBA because teams needed some sort of weapon to try to contain Shaq when they played him. So think about what would happen to the small ball NBA now. Teams would have to try to rock someone who was like 7'2", and he'd basically be only played when they were guarding Shaq. But even the people who are in that camp, they still say ridiculous stuff like, oh, Shaq would have no problems destroying the Warriors. He would, I hear people say that he would like lock them down and that they wouldn't be able to score on him. Shaq was never a great defender. He was just huge. But then even beyond that, it's like, that is such a, like, do you even watch the modern league? Even mobile centers like Steven Adams have a hard time guarding, point guards like Steph Curry on the perimeter. Steven Adams and Tristan Thompson are about as good as you're going to get for traditional centers on the, in terms of switching onto guards in the perimeter. And Curry torches those guys. You think Shaquille O'Neal, 7'1", 325, probably even heavier than that pounds, would stand a chance on defense? They would pick on him so bad. But the thing is, though, is I do think that, and this is something that I haven't really heard anybody say, but if Shaq did kind of come up and play in the modern era, his body would have been totally different. He wouldn't have, because the point back then was, let's just, beef him up as big as possible, make sure that literally no one can handle him under the basket, and he can, shove 5 guys out of the way and dunk. But nowadays, the goal would be, you have more size than everyone else. You're a legit 7'1", and you're huge and wide, but you're going to have to be quicker on the perimeter. We want you to stay lean and fast, like he was when he first came into the league in Orlando, which, again, if you want to see, athletic Shaq, go watch him in like his first couple years in Orlando. It was jarring for me when I first saw it. It was like, oh my God, not only was he a lot thinner, he was fast and athletic, and he was flying around the court, and he was like, you can see him like bringing the ball up and pushing it on the break and dunking, almost like a DeMarcus Cousins would today. Like, he was like, the power and the grace that he had at his size back then was really obscene. It was ridiculous. And he would have been more like that if he played in the league. So that's just kind of me trying to get all this off my chest about just kind of the all-around stupidity that seems to just surround this discussion. Like, it seems like nobody, even if you're on the right side, has a logical argument. It's absurd. So I just wanted to kind of set the record straight. Shaquille O'Neal was a monster. Lakers Shaq would have a lot of problems on defense in the modern league, but he wouldn't have looked like that. He would have been lean and cut, and he would have pretty much been like a bigger, even quicker DeMarcus Cousins. So there you have it. Okay, next up on the docket is a new segment I like to call the obligatory Talk About the Republican Party Minute. And it's not really going to be a minute, whatever. However long it is, it just sounds better as a minute. Anyways, the thing I kind of wanted to talk about for this week is gun control. And it's a hot topic. It's been a hot topic for, like 6 years it's been now. But what I kind of wanted to say is, after the tragedy at that bar and grill in California, what I kind of wanted to get across is we do have a gun problem. If you're a Republican, you at least have to recognize that we have a gun issue. We're the only first world country where stuff like this regularly happens. And it's undeniable. Once we realize that, it's up for debate on what the solution should be. But there's no question that we need a solution. And we need to just kind of, as a country, get to that point where we're saying, yes, there is a problem. Now let's work on how to fix it. Because the NRA is not doing that. And people who are pro-gun just kind of follow a lot of what the NRA says and act like there's no problem. They act like parrot that line over and over again of, we don't have a gun problem in America, we have a mental health problem. And an ex-Marine with PTSD just walked into a bar and grill and shot it up. That is a mental health problem. And I thought that was exactly what you were trying to prevent when you said it was a mental health problem. But you haven't done anything because something like that just happened again. There hasn't been any change in mental health policy. I don't think if the Republican Party or the NRA were to actually make measures against mental health, that the Democrats would refute it. I think everyone would be for that, but that hasn't happened. Even though they keep saying it's a mental health issue, they haven't made not even one iota of a push for better kind of laws against people with mental problems buying firearms or even getting them better treatment. And that right there should just go to show anyone who may be listening who has said that line before about it being a mental health issue, not a gun issue. That should show you the NRA doesn't care. The NRA does not give a fuck about mental health. All they're doing is trying to create a diversion. They're trying to, just so they can keep their assault rifles regulation free. That's really what they want. They just want to say, hey, look over here. This is a problem. Not with us. I mean, this mental health thing is a problem, but the day after a shooting, that's the only time they care about it. After that, don't hear one thing about mental health. And mental health is a problem. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. If you have PTSD, you shouldn't be allowed to carry, an assault rifle, no matter what. I think any staunch gun supporter who is worth his salt would say that. I mean, you can't join the police force if you have PTSD and you fail a psych exam. You shouldn't be able to buy a weapon that even the police force doesn't have access to if you fail a psych exam and you have awful PTSD that might lead you to someday shoot up a bar and grill. So that's it for this week's obligatory yell at the Republican Party minute. I hate that we have to have this segment, but it just feels like if I want to cover stuff that's happening in the world, you have to mention this stuff because it's really bad. We're in a really bad time right now. And anyone who's denying that, I don't know what to tell you. It goes back to my one thing that I've always kind of wished were true is that I think you should, before you are allowed to vote, you should have to fill out some sort of questionnaire that deems you knowledgeable enough to vote. If you can't even name, if you can't, the example I always go to is during the elections. If you can't name the policies of the candidates and you can't kind of reasonably match up quotes from the candidates to the person who said it, then you're not educated enough to vote. And it has nothing to do with, trying to shut down Republicans. I think I'm actually pretty centrist, honestly. I'm not crazy far liberal, but you should at least know what you're talking about. And these people who are spouting the mental health thing, it's very clear that these people have no clue. And if they were to actually have to take a test about the shit that they're voting for, they wouldn't know. They would fail. So I guess just kind of my long-winded way of saying, be better educated. That's I guess all we can do is just urge people to be better educated and be smarter and actually work for the good of the country instead of the good of some organization, whether it be the NRA or the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. You should vote for what's good for the country. Okay. Yeah, now that that's over, move on to more of a lighthearted topic. Juul, the e-cigarette company. Anyone who's in high school or college right now has heard of Juul before. We all know what those are. They've shut down their Facebook and Instagram accounts, and they've made their YouTube page 18 plus, and they've now filled it with adults, legal adults, talking about how much it's helped them quit smoking, because Juul has come under fire recently for the fact that their product is so popular with teenage guys and girls, but I think a lot of it I've noticed is with teenage guys. It's become super popular with them, and it seemed for a long time like Juul, they didn't give a fuck. They just wanted they wanted to sell their e-cigs. Now, I can't remember if they've just come under fire or if they actually have had some regulations put on them, but I know they're also, stores are not going to be selling a lot of their more, delicious candy-based flavors. Like, I was reading an article and it was like, they had like creme brulee vape, which is ridiculous. That's the most absurd thing I've ever heard. And they're not allowed to sell that anymore. Or at least they're not going to be selling anymore. Again, I can't remember which one it is. But, yeah, and this is kind of all in an effort to get teenagers and young people in general to stop using their products. And it's just ridiculous to me. It's so funny, like, literally, like, okay, so I'll back up a little. When I was a sophomore in high school, this was kind of just on the cusp of the whole vaping thing. And at first, it was like the kids who were leading that vape charge were like, they were like, dude, don't worry, there's no nicotine in it. We're just, puffing the vapor. And my attitude was like, whatever, dude. If you want to do this, as long as you're not, it's dumb, but as long as you're not, getting addicted to it, whatever. It's stupid, but at least you're being smart about your stupidity. But then there was just this shift where it was like, kids were like, yeah, dude, I got the nicotine one. Yeah, I got the nicotine one. Yeah, I'm getting the shakes without it. Like, it was ridiculous. Like, these kids were like whispering and trading their vapes on the bus, and they're like, yeah, dude, I got 5% nicotine in this one. And it was like a badge of honor the more nicotine you had. And like, it was like the culture totally shifted by the end of the year from like, nah, dude, we wouldn't use the nicotine, we're not idiots, to like, yeah, dude, let's use the fucking nicotine. It was like, I was like, what are you doing? You're getting like needlessly addicted to like breathing in strawberry flavored water vapor. Why? That was always my question, was why? Why are you, like, you think it makes you cool to like walk around the hallways and like breathe in like strawberry shortcake fumes everywhere. Like, it was always absurd. Like, it made no sense to me. It's like all these kids who are trying to look tough. It's like, it's hard to be tough and cool when, you know, every time you breathe out, it smells like blueberries. Like, it's absurd. It was, and I thought it was going to be a trend that died out in a couple years. And I didn't think it would become as widespread as it did. Like, it's normal now. Like, I'm in college, and it's normal for these kids to just walk around with vapes, and it's like, it's not even like a shameful thing anymore like it was when it first started in my high school. It was like, yeah, dude, everyone vapes. It's cool. We're just, you know, breathing in fucking candy vapor, and it's like, what are you doing? It's absurd. And I'm not gonna lie, sometimes when I walk by one, I'll get hit with like a really nice smell. Like, it's like, wow, that is like some pomegranate, strawberry shortcake, just cornucopia. It tastes delicious, or it smells delicious. And it's like, I'm not gonna lie, for 3 seconds, it's like, hey, I kind of want one. But then I snap out of it, and it's like, what? No, you don't want one. Don't be an idiot. I don't know. I don't get it. And to be honest, I don't understand really why it's become such a hot commodity amongst teens. But I guess, I can only guess it's that we're all at the point where we kind of know actual smoking is really bad. And it's like, yeah, I want to be hard and look cool by smoking. But, you know, the actual, like, danger and cancer, I mean, I don't want any of that. So I'll breathe in this this cheesecake vapor. Like, it's, I don't know, man. But I think in short, it definitely won't work at first, the new changes to Juul. People will just do it anyway. They'll, like, it, you can't change it overnight. But I think, I'll say I'm a little optimistic for the eventuality of these changes working. Where we'll look up in 3 years and it's like, yeah, people don't really vape anymore because they took away all the good flavors, and yeah, no, it's, I don't know. I don't even understand why it's cool in the first place. The trends, honestly, they've totally lost me. And, you know, whatever. And I want to say, whatever, it's not hurting you, but it is hurting you because you're fucking addicted and you can't stop even if you want to. Your kids literally get the shakes when they don't vape for a while. It's absurd. And then there are some studies out there that show that vaping might actually be really bad for you, just like cigarettes. But whatever, man. I guess if you want to be an idiot, be an idiot. And I mean, to be honest with you, I'd rather have people vape than smoke real cigarettes. And I look down on people who smoke real cigarettes, like seriously hardcore, because it's at the point where you're literally choosing to hurt the people around you as well. Like, you smell like cigarettes, you're blowing cigarette smoke everywhere, your entire house is like a fucking chimney. Like, you're literally, there are people who live next door to me, and they're literally like nuking their own kids just because they'd rather smoke real cigarettes than vape, which I think is fucked up. To be honest, I think real cigarettes should be outlawed now that we have vape. It's really fucked up. That's all I can say about it, man. If you're still, this is a PSA, anyone who may be listening, if you're smoking real cigarettes, you're fucked up at this point. I don't care that I guess it must be smoother or whatever, more fun. I don't really get it. If it were me, I think I'd rather, having kind of smelt cigarette smoke and having smelt vape, I think I'd rather take the vape myself. All right, now I kind of want to just shout out. This is gonna happen every week, but this episode I definitely want to give a quick shout out to the YouTube channel Gas Station Encounters. I've just found these guys for the first time like a few weeks ago, and oh my lord, it is one of the fucking funniest YouTube channels I have ever seen. I highly recommend anybody who's listening to check them out. They are hysterical. It's basically like gas station surveillance footage of people stealing with with the guy who works there doing voiceovers over it, and they almost always end in the guy catching them in real time and like following. He lets them walk out the door, and then he goes up to their car and gets their license plate and confronts it. It's so funny because like it's sad seeing like these like 40-year-old, but sometimes they're really old, like sometimes they're like 70, and they're coming into a gas station and like stealing fucking SpaghettiOs. Oh my god. I found their channel at like 2 a.m. and I was up until I think 6 o'clock that night, just rolling laughing. God, it's so funny. There's one where like this couple breaks in, and they're not breaks in, but they come in and I forget what they steal, but the cops come, and the guy gets like fucking tackled by the cops, and then his girlfriend tries to like sneak out the back, so she runs into the back, finds out there's no exit, so she climbs into the ceiling and then fucking falls through right in front of the cops. It's such a good channel. I could not recommend it more. And it's actually pretty, you get the feeling from watching a lot of them that the guy who runs it is a lot more talented than you would think, because he's not only is he like doing really funny voiceovers, and he's also the one who's catching these fucking thieves, because it's so obvious. Like a lot of them, like the joke of the channel is like they always look at the counter when they walk in. It's like anyone who's stealing, they walk in, look up at the counter, then they walk over to whatever they're stealing and they look again. It's unbelievable. But you get the sense that he's more talented than he lets on, because he does some like musical parodies sometimes where he's actually pretty like kind of musically talented from what we can gather, because there's one where he does a parody of, what's that stupid Little Pump song that I can only think of the parody version. Oh, Gucci Gang. He does a parody of it called Gatorade, and he's better than fucking Little Pump on that song. And then he does one for AC/DC's TNT, where it's not like he's a great singer, but like he sings it. I mean, he pulls it off, and he has some clever lyrics. He's actually pretty fucking funny. And kind of talented, I guess. It sure seems like he might be some sort of artist behind the scenes, but they're so funny, man. It's such a good and some of them are, I've said this already, but some of them are so obscenely dumb. Like there's one where this dude, and he's there with his kids, and he comes in and he steals like 5 sandwiches and drops them down his pants, like right in front of the register. It is absurdly stupid, and it's always funny when he comes out and confronts them, because they're like There's one where this guy looks like a fucking heroin addict, and he comes in, he steals a can of SpaghettiOs, and he is the least efficient thief I've ever seen. He walks in, and he takes, he of course looks at the counter, takes a while to, meander over to the SpaghettiOs. He fucking steals them, and then he walks over, and he's like, yo, you guys got coffee? And he takes fucking forever at this stupid ass coffee machine. And it's like he literally takes like 3 full minutes making himself a fucking coffee. And and then he buys it. He buys like a small coffee, steals the SpaghettiOs, and I'm thinking like, don't the SpaghettiOs cost the same, dude? Like, couldn't you just fucking not have bought the coffee and paid for the fucking SpaghettiOs? Like, at most, it's like $1 more. Probably, I don't know. But then he does that, right? And then he realizes, like, oh, I got away with the SpaghettiOs. So then, after checking out and buying his small coffee with his SpaghettiOs in his pocket, he, like, walks over and he's like, oh, I can steal something else. And he, like, walks over. I think he steals, like, a drink or something, or Tylenol. And it's like, no one does that, first of all. No one buys something and then meanders around the store looking around for, like, another 2 minutes. And he's like, it's so bad. It's so dumb. And it's hard to explain without watching it. But he's just, like, walking around without direction, like, just trying to find something else to steal. It is so bad. I feel like the biggest fucking idiot cashier who's like 15 on his first day of work could have caught him. And then, of course, the guy makes him think he gets away with it. So he lets him walk to his car. And then he follows him. And the guy, like, he's like, what the fuck did you steal? Fucking SpaghettiOs? And it's just that, like, derisive, like, what, you feeling fucking SpaghettiOs? Like, it's so good. And there's one where, like, he does that a lot, where he'll be like, what did you steal? Milk? And it's like, and he's got, like, these, like, 35, 40-year-old dudes, like, coming back into the store with him. Gotta pay for their milk. It's unbelievable. So, yeah, gas station encounters. They have a thing in their description about don't repost our content without, our consent. So I hope they don't mind me spoiling a couple of their videos, I guess. But, I mean, I guess they probably won't mind the shout-out. And whatever. At least for now, I'm small. So they'll probably never hear this. But, actually, if you do check out gas station counters from this, just comment, give them a quick comment, tell them Podcast Paradise sent you. Maybe we'll get some viewers out of that, who knows. But yeah, definitely shout out of the week, gas station encounters. Their shit's fucking awesome. Okay, the last thing I just kind of wanted to say before we call it a wrap for episode 3 is I want to talk about the rumors of an Office reboot, the show The Office. And these not so much rumors, but more pleas have been pretty prevalent in the last couple years, especially. And they've been ramping up. And then, I believe it was last night or the night before, there was okay, it was Saturday night. It was SNL. Apparently, Steve Carell hosted in his monologue. Ed Helms and Jenna Fisher and the girl who plays Erin kind of joined him. And that, combined with just kind of the fact that it seems like Office fandom has gotten even stronger recently, and that that kind of members from the cast, at least to me, seem to be talking about it even more than they used to be. And the idea of a reboot's been getting brought back up. And now there are rumors that, like, oh my god, they might actually reboot it. And I mean, I might be missing something. I haven't exactly. I'm a huge fan of The Office, actually, but I haven't read up on everything. Every reason why they might be bringing it back. But people definitely seem to be somewhat seriously convinced, at least sort of, that the show might be coming back. And it would make sense financially for something like, really any TV network, but if Netflix just came out with an original season of The Office, oh my lord, would that be a brilliant business decision. Apparently they're $20 billion in debt, so maybe they don't have the money. They don't have the money to pay for that, but bringing back The Office would almost single-handedly revive whatever channel it was on. The thing is, though, I don't want an Office reboot. Trust me, I'm as big a fan of The Office as anyone. I have seen the show so many times, at least from seasons 1 through, I'd say 5 are the ones that I've seen literally so many times that the jokes aren't even funny to me anymore because I've just seen them so many times. And I don't want a reboot. In my heart, I say, man, it would be cool to have a reboot and just, I could just get these characters back for one more season. Just get some fresh content with these guys. Because, it's still probably maybe not there are some shows that you can just blast right through. Like, I think That 70s Show is kind of like that, or It's Always Sunny, where you can just put on episodes and just blast through them. But The Office definitely has an argument for the most bingeable show on Netflix. There's a reason why it might even be more popular than it was in its prime. And that's saying something, because it was extraordinarily popular. But now it's like literally everybody under 30 kind of like universally watches this show as like their comfort show, where they literally just binge it over and over and over and over and over again. And whenever they're studying, they put on The Office in the background. And whenever they have, an hour to kill, they put on an episode of The Office. And whenever they're lying in bed, they watch The Office for 3 hours before they go to sleep. It is mind-blowingly popular with people from my generation. And I'm not really sure where I was going with that. The bottom line, it's super popular. It would make a lot of money I think that's where I was going with it, that it would make a lot of money. But I know where I was going with it. Duh. I was saying I was a huge Office fan, but I still don't want it to come back because the show sucked. Seasons 8 and 9 were horrid television. Season 6 was pretty bad too. Season 7 was a little better than 6, but it wasn't that good. It was good. It was okay. It was watchable for sure. Enjoyable, but it wasn't. It was just missing a lot of what The Office used to have, and just by virtue of putting just the pure fact of putting the characters back in their Office roles and making another season with Steve Carell is not going to guarantee a funny show. The reason they ended that show was because it was like literally the cast members came up to the writers and said, dude, this show needs to fucking end. It is just dragging on for too long. And I don't know. I guess maybe just because Steve Carell and because there's been years there's been such a big gap where they've kind of, taken a break and they kind of have the juices for the show flowing again maybe. But other than that, I just don't see a way in which this is really good. It would shock me. Let me say that. It would really shock me if the Office reboot turns out to be really on the level of even season 5 of The Office. And it would not surprise me if it was bad. I mean, I would be surprised if it was 8 or 9 bad, but I would not be surprised if it was season 6 bad. It's just kind of the nature of it is like when you're, and it's because I kind of fall into the trap too, right? Is like when I was finishing it, watching 8 and 9, it was like, man, this is such a fucking drag. They should have ended the show way before. But I'm OCD and I want to finish the whole show, but it's such a fucking slog and it's legitimately difficult to get through these last 2 seasons. They should have ended it. I want to shoot myself watching this. But then when you actually watch the last couple episodes, you're like, damn, I wish it went on a little longer. It's like, it's just kind of the way it goes. And especially when you've been watching it now, you're like, man, I would just kill for one more new season. I don't care if it's good. I just want to see the characters again. But it's like my brain, like that's what like my heart wants, like my irrational part of me. But my brain says, you don't want an Office reboot, Max. You know that it's probably not going to be good. You know that it's just perpetuating the whole trend of, hey, we're struggling, let's reboot an old show because it's easy. I'm putting myself down as anti-Office reboot. Just because I don't think I would love it if it were to somehow come back and we were to get, a season on par with the first 4 ideally. Or really 2 through 4. But I just don't think that's gonna happen. I don't see any way in which that happens. Because TV and creativity doesn't work like that. You can't just like, summon your old creativity on a whim. Like creativity comes from inspiration, and that inspiration is fleeting. You don't just get all of that out and make brilliant TV, and then you run out of it and the show starts to suck, and then all of a sudden you can just get it back like you're in 2007 again. Like, it doesn't work like that. Yeah. I don't know, man. I mean, I'll watch it if they bring it back, that's for sure. And I'll be hopeful. I'm not a hater. Because, again, if they were to bring it back, I would love it. But I just don't see it. You can't. It's like we saw it. How many times do we see it in movies and TV and music? Like, we see it in music all the time where, like, Slayer, for example. It's like, oh, we'll bring back Lombardo and we'll make music like we did in the 80s. But Christ Delusion and World Pain and Blood are not good. They're meh, but they're not good albums. They're not anywhere near as good as the shit that they were writing in the 80s. And it's because that creative spark is gone. That inspiration where you're like, man, I really want to write this, and I'm just almost possessed by like carrying out this vision that I have. And that's what the writers obviously had when they were first making The Office in 2, 3, and 4, where it was just like, it almost felt like, from afar, it felt like their ideas were just pumping out because just the cast members were all so perfect for their roles, and Steve Carell was such a brilliant actor and writer and professional on set, and that the ideas just kept flowing out of him. But once those stop, it's hard to get it back. You can't just will it out of you. You have to be legitimately inspired. So I don't know, man. Put me down for thumbs down for the Office reboot. So that was Podcast Paradise episode 3. I don't know if I'll have one up next week because, I mean, it is Thanksgiving break, and on top of that, I mean, I have a lot of work to do for Monday and Tuesday. But you know, hopefully, maybe the following week, or maybe even sooner. Maybe I'll record one like Wednesday and put one up. But until then, I will say, see you later in episode 4, whenever that is. Peace out, Girl Scout.